Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet, Exeunt, Pursued by a Bear, and I've got no rhythm. And today I want to do the Shakespeare Journey Tag. I just want to make sure that I say who this is originated by. The channel's Books I'm Not Reading, that's Kelly, I think, at Books I'm Not Reading, and Husband, Old Blues, Chapter and Verse, and another channel called A Day of Small Things, which I did not know about until finding this tag. So shout out to all three of those. Thank you for this. I haven't been tagged by anybody, but I'm just going to do my own selfish version of this because I want to talk about lots of plays. So first, what was your first reading experience of Shakespeare and what was it like? I think, so I was a precocious early reader, which meant that other people were impressed with the fact that my mother taught me to read when I was quite young. So people thought I was very brainy when I'm talking about 5, 6, 7. For my 7th birthday, someone bought me a complete one-volume, complete works of Shakespeare. I didn't read it, but and why someone thought that was an appropriate present for a 7-year-old, I do not know. But I have that volume somewhere. I don't know if I have it here, but yeah, that was it. So I had this spectre of Shakespeare hanging over me, even though, of course, I never even cracked open there, because these one-volume things are impossible to read or get anything out of. Actually, my wife also has given, I think, which was a little bit older, maybe sort of 11 or 12, but was given a complete one-volume works of Shakespeare, and has grander sort of green leather bound, bigger, and gold foil around the edges, and a fancy edition. But again, utterly useless if you want to actually read the plays. Anyway, my first real encounter with Shakespeare was aged 11. I was in my first school play. So this was this private all-boys school just in the suburbs outside North London. The school play for the junior school, that was 11 to 13, was in the summer, at the end of the summer term, so the last 2 or 3 days of school of the whole term, but the rehearsals went all the way through that beautiful summer period when it can be glorious. So we used to get called in for rehearsals, and we would spend all day Sunday at our school. Normally Sunday was not a school day, obviously, and so as 11-year-old boys who when we weren't up on stage sort of blocking things out, would just run around the playgrounds. And so some of the most glorious memories of being in school when you weren't supposed to be in school, when everything was closed and locked up, but we had the run of this place, and we weren't wearing school uniform and all these things. There was fond memories. And I was a fairy. I was Cobweb in a production of A Midsummer's Night Dream. And that was my, over hill, over dale, thorough bush, thorough briar, up a park, up a pale, thorough flood, thorough flower, we do wander everywhere, swifter than the moon's sphere, and we serve the fairy queen to do our orbs about the green, something like that. And I maybe have had 1 or 2 lines to myself, but essentially I was part of this chorus of fairies. There were, I think, 3 cobwebs and 3 mustard seeds and 2 whatever, I can't remember the other fairies. Years later, many years later, about 30 years later, I was living now in Israel, working for a high-tech startup company, and we were doing a production, outsourced video production, and they got on a phone call with an English-speaking voiceover artist who'd done some of the video work before, and I'm on the call, and we're all sitting around the phone, and he's on a call somewhere else in at his place of business, and the guy introduces himself, and everyone on my team knew him already because they'd worked with him before, but I was new to the team, and I hear his voice and I hear his name, and I go, oh, and they go, oh, do you know, because we were both English, so then they're like, oh, do you know his name? And I said, yes, I was a fairy to his bottom. And that was a true story because he played bottom in that production of Midsummer's Night Dream. Has a reading of a Shakespeare play ever brought you to tears? What scene was it, and where were you when it happened? I don't think so. I mean, I do. I'm a big crier. I'm a crier at all sorts of things. I can't think of a particular part of a Shakespeare play that reduced me to tears. If anything, it would be in one of the tragedies. I'm a sucker for a tragedy. So, Ophelia's End, or even the closing scene of Romeo and Juliet might have. But I just think they're so well worn and so familiar that they might not have had that particular power in that particular moment for me. I don't say it could never happen. I imagine there are productions, and I'm going to talk about some of the productions I've seen, and some of those, thinking about them, it's kind of made me emotional. So I don't know if that counts. 3. Are there any people who have played a significant role in your Shakespeare journey? Okay, I'm going to do something I don't do very often here, which is give credit to my wife. And here's why. I was a literature student. So I studied for my O levels, which is the end of 10th grade. I studied English literature as one of the 10 subjects that I did. I also then chose English literature for my A levels. So one of 3 subjects I did for 12th grade exams, and then I did a degree in English literature. So I fancied myself a bit of a literary student, and we'd studied for O level. I did Henry IV Part 1. For A levels, I did Othello and King Lear, and in university did a bunch of stuff, Anthony Cleopatra, and probably a bit of Hamlet, and dipped in and out of other Shakespearean plays. But I think I was a poseur. I wasn't a real, I liked to talk a big game. Well, yes, I'm a literature. And I think my wife probably nudged me further towards actually going out and seeing some Shakespeare and including it in part of the things that I enjoy. And a couple of episodes. One, I can't remember which. This might have been my 18th, 19th, 20th or 21st birthday, which is not a good sign. So this is before we're married and when we were dating. And she bought us tickets for my birthday, on my birthday, and we went to see a production of, well, you can't see it here because all the little windows are closed, but if you see here, and then if I open all these up, it would say, oh, Comedy of Errors, believe me, trust me. So this is the fancy programme. This is the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company, at the Barbican, which is a fabulous theatre in London, where the RSC, usually when they come to London, this was their home theatre, as opposed to in Stratford-upon-Avon. And this was a production of the Comedy of Errors, which I hadn't read and didn't know anything about before going to see it. And this production blew our minds. It was just spectacular. The staging was spectacular. In classic Shakespeare tradition, it's got several sets of twins in it, and it's a mess, and it's a farce, and the staging here was just fabulous. I'd say I can't remember exactly what year this would be. So it's somewhere between 88 and 92, something like that, would be there or thereabouts. There's an advert for Ian McKellen in Richard III, but this was a production. No one terribly famous. I had a look at the cast list. No one I recognised I saw in this production, but just the production itself blew me away. And I've done some subsequent research where I see other people talking about the best ever productions of the Comedy of Errors, and this is well remembered. And then later on, we had this fabulous trip. The two of us went to Stratford-upon-Avon, again, very early on, either after we were married or just before we were married. We took 2 days in Stratford-upon-Avon. My wife had booked the whole thing and also booked us theatre tickets to see whatever productions were on the time. And we saw a production of 'Tis Pity She's a Whore, which is not a Shakespeare play, but we also saw a production of a very underperformed, I guess, and not a super popular play called 'Tis Pity She's a Whore. Tis Pity She's a Whore. We saw Two Gentlemen of Verona, which is a Shakespeare play, which I don't remember much about. Again, the cast here, no one super stands out. Saskia Reeves, I've seen her in a bunch of things. She was playing Sylvia, but that was also great. So those are two things I saw with my wife, and I've seen other Shakespeare with her subsequently, but that, I think, had a sort of impact on me. So I'm going to give her a shout out. Do you have a favourite book or film about Shakespeare? So I watched Brian at Bookish's version of this, and he spoke about Hamlet, and he spoke about Shakespeare in Love, both of which I adored. I'm going to bring up also Anthony Burgess's Nothing Like the Sun, as in My Mistress' Eyes Are, as a book that I read 35 years ago and thought was super. And significantly, the question asks a favourite book or film about Shakespeare does not ask if you have a favourite play about Shakespeare. And I'm going to mention Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead by Tom Stoppard, famously also the screenwriter of Shakespeare in Love. Everything's connected. Okie dokie. Which character in Shakespeare most resembles you, and in what ways? I don't. The Fool in King Lear. Which play would you most like to see performed in a theatre, and why? So I've seen a bunch of Shakespeare plays, not exhaustively, and certainly not all the plays, but I thought I'd show you, because this is a great opportunity, because I keep all my theatre programmes, so I thought I'd show you a few of them, and it's a way of me putting on record all the productions of Shakespeare that I've seen. So this was, we saw this, I don't know when this is, this must be sometime in the early aughts or the late 90s. It's after war, living in Israel. We're back in England, and we saw that's Ralph Fiennes in Richard II in Shoreditch somewhere. It was like in some abandoned warehouse. I don't think it was actual theatre. I can't remember. It was the Almeida Theatre Company, but this was in a staged in like I think a converted warehouse or something. Who else is in this? Ralph Fiennes, Linus Roach, Amelia Fox. I don't remember, don't recognise many of the other names. Okay, so that was that. I've got this. This was fabulous. This is a production, a Peter Hall production of The Merchant of Venice, which I saw in London, not with my wife. And this production had Dustin Hoffman as Shylock, and that was fantastic. This was a big get that he was coming to London to play Shylock, and I saw that production. It was fabulous. So this is going back the nights before we came to Israel, early 90s. I might have been a student, and I went with a friend of mine, and we saw that. This is more recent. This is Hamlet at the Young Vic, and this we saw with Michael Sheen. This is 4 or 5 years ago maybe, and love this. Who else is in this? Adil Akhtar is playing Guildenstern. Who else do we see in here? There's Michael Sheen. I'm trying to think any other names. Benedict Wong, who is from he's done a bunch of things, but he's the in the Doctor Strange movies. Who else? He played Laertes. That's it. Anyway, Michael Sheen was absolutely fabulous and loved the Young Vic. This is interesting. This is another school production in my same school that I had played in Midsummer's Night Dream, and this is a version of Tempest they put on. It was a very good private boys' school, and being in a play, you see, we were a boys' school with a girls' school next door, but there was no connection, interaction between. We shared some grounds, but we didn't do anything together. But if you're in a play, you see, you got to sometimes perform with girls and rehearse and do the whole thing. So plays were a big thing. And this is a production of The Tempest. I was just having a look at the cast and seeing if there was anyone familiar there. And lo and behold, I recognise some of these names because these are boys I was in school with. But down in playing one of the castaways, the ship's master is, you'll see that, is William Sutcliffe. William Sutcliffe is a novelist, quite a successful novelist. He wrote a book called New Boy, which was about my school. He wrote another book called Love Hexagon. But again, I don't like to frame anyone in relation to their spouses. Interestingly, William Sutcliffe is married to Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote Hamlet. Boom! It's all connected. This is King Lear that I saw at the National Theatre many years ago. This is when I was studying it for A-levels. This would have been 86, 87. King Lear, played by Sir Anthony Hopkins. Saw that, love that. Bill Nighy, it also turns out to be in the cast playing Edgar. Who else do we see here? Any other names, any other big names? I don't think anyone there. Suzanne Burtish played Regan. Anna Massey was Goneril. So that was great. That was a fantastic production. Yes, great. What else have I got? Oh, a couple of productions that I saw in Israel. First of all, this Romeo and Juliet, which we saw very locally in my small suburb. This was like one of these visiting companies that travels the world and puts on Shakespeare plays, I guess for students of foreign languages who are studying the plays. So Romeo and Juliet is one of the texts studied by Israeli students doing English. And so they travel the world to countries. Anyway, it wasn't a great production of Romeo and Juliet, but we did go very locally with the kids and saw live Shakespeare. And this is many years ago I saw this. This was the Royal Shakespeare Company visiting and touring Israel, sponsored by the what do you call it? The British what do you call it? What do they call the British cultural doodah? The British Council. Thank you. That send troops all over the world. And this was a production of Troilus and Cressida. Actual RSC. You can see Troilus and Cressida there in Hebrew. Still recovering from COVID. What a disaster. So this was the brochure that we got, and saw this in Tel Aviv with my wife. Paid through the nose, absolutely ridiculous prices we paid to see this. And looking through the names of the people that were in this travelling cast. I'm not sure there's anyone here who has gone on to great fame, but getting to see live Shakespeare anywhere is a treat. Getting to see in Israel, I think I'm sure there are Hebrew language versions of plays that are put in production. I don't go to a lot of Hebrew language theatre because I don't think my Hebrew's good enough, and certainly not good enough to get the Shakespearean language value of it. Anyway, which actor throughout history would you most like to have seen play Hamlet while in his prime? I don't know is the answer to this question. I mean, there's some great answers to this. Burton, Gielgud, some of those classic people that we grew up. Laurence Olivier, of course. They're a little actorly, perhaps, then for sort of more modern taste. I thought Michael Sheen was fabulous. I did see one performance of Shakespeare by an actor not in his prime, and it was an astonishing performance. And this was back in the day at the National Theatre. This would have been 1989. So however many years ago, 35 years ago. And this was the production, famously, this was the production that Daniel Day-Lewis was supposed to be in. And in the dress rehearsals or some point before the production went live, he freaked out. He thought, he was playing Hamlet, and he saw a vision of his actual father, Daniel Day-Lewis's father, not Hamlet's father, Cecil Day-Lewis, the poet laureate. I knew him as a writer of children's books. He wrote The Otterbury Incident with Child. Anyway, Daniel Lewis thought he actually saw his real father, freaked out and left the production, and was replaced by an actor called Ian Charleson. Ian Charleson, you probably remember, if you don't know the name, you will have seen him in Chariots of Fire, a fantastic film from 1981, where he played Eric Liddell. There was Harold Abrams was the two main actors, the two main stars of the stories in the movie Chariots of Fire were Harold Abrams, who was a Jewish sprinter, and Eric Liddell, who was a religious Christian who wouldn't run on Sunday. And then the two of them go on to win their medals in their respective races. And if you haven't seen Chariots of Fire, stop watching this, go watch Chariots of Fire. It stands up. It's a fantastic thing. Anyway, Ian Charleson from 1981 was in that movie. 8 years later, he was called in to replace Daniel Day-Lewis in this production of Hamlet. During his performance on stage, which was mesmerising, his face was very swollen, and he had very sort of odd look. He'd been such a striking, sort of neat, handsome man, and he looked unwell. 6 months after the production, Ian Charleson was dead, age 40, and had asked after his death that it be announced that he had died of AIDS, because he died January 1990. Still in that period, there was a taboo surrounding the idea of men contracting and dying of AIDS. It was an astonishing performance, made more astonishing when you see the history. This was a man in the last 6 months of his life. His face was swollen because he was suffering from septicemia, and he went out every night and gave his all in the role of Hamlet. I think Ian McKellen won the award that year for Best Actor, and on stage said, and this should go to the best performance I've seen, which is Ian Charleson, and gave Charleson the award. A terribly tragic story. Ian Charleson was, as I say, a beautiful, beautiful young man, died way too young, and the best thing that could possibly have come out of this was that there is an award given now every year in the UK, not in London, award given to the best up-and-coming young actors, and it's the Ian Charleson Award, and it's given every year. And if you go and look on Wikipedia over the last 40 years now, 30 years now, of people who won the Ian Charleson Award, it's a who's who of British actors. Everyone who you've seen being villainous in a Hollywood movie in the last 20 years probably won the Ian Charleson Award 10 years earlier. But yeah, that's a production that stays with my mind. Not an actor in his prime, but an actor giving 150% of his ability in the last 6 months of his life, and very proud and glad to have seen it, even if it looked like he was a man suffering for his art. That was Ian Charleson's the Ian Charleson production, rather than the Daniel Day-Lewis production of Hamlet at the National. Deliver your favourite speech or soliloquy from a Shakespeare play. For my O level, so I'm 16, and we did Henry IV Part One, and he has a whole thing about Henry IV Part One. He's Hal, who's going to become, he's the son of the king, and he eventually becomes Henry V. He messes around with Falstaff, if you're familiar, and he's got a whole gang of misfits that he hangs around with, and it's a bit frowned upon. And he again delivers the key to understanding Hal's whole strategy is the speech that he gives, where he says, "I know you all, and will a while uphold the unyoked human of your idleness. Yet herein do I imitate the sun that doth allow the base contagious clouds to cover." Blah 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 blah. I've got no rhythm. I don't remember the rest of it. But that's the whole sort of revelation of his plot. It's devious but sort of inspiring at the same time. Do any of Shakespeare's plays intimidate you? If yes, what play and why? Yeah, I think the histories. As someone who's born and educated in the UK, I'm so ignorant of all the Johns and the Henrys and the and who everyone is, and the Richards and who everyone is in relation to everyone else. And so, without having an explicit reason or someone nudging me and helping me to study them, I've sort of, do I really want, what, I don't know enough about who was who and what was what, and yeah, a little bit intimidating. And then some of the really gory ones as well, I think. Timon of Athens, no thank you. Which is your favourite Shakespeare play and why? I don't know, I think probably Hamlet, just because I didn't ever formally study it, and yet I've come to it by seeing it and reading it and then seeing it again and then reading it, and I think it's so rich. Obviously, every line in the play is the title of your favourite album, or the title of a novel, or is referenced somewhere else, and it just is such a milestone in the sort of world, the popular culture world that I sort of wander around ankle deep in most of my life. So I think, yeah, it's maybe a dull answer, but it's so rich, and I would see every production that I could of it, because I think, yeah, and I don't reread, and I'm not, but I could revisit Hamlet. I think it is endlessly faceted and fascinating. And that's it. Yeah, I'm not going to tag anything up. Choose. No one tagged me, so away with you. God bless. Bye.